Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I want to tackle Arc Worm and specifically the counter to it. I made a video about it before on how to play that specific comp, link will be up top, but it's still a very prevalent comp and countering it has been a bit of a pain, but people have started to come up with some ideas. And in this game, I want to showcase one of those with the Ignite Fangs. A little bit of a spoiler there, but it's a good game that shows the dynamic between two long-range fights and kind of trying to vie for that meta comp and then having to abandon it at some point because I end up falling behind and I want to try and get out of that position and find a counter to my opponent. Now, I go for a steel ball pack here and you might think, but Rooster, why are you not playing aggro with this? I mean, the steel balls are fast and usually you would expect them to be somewhere near the line. But with the arc lights being the core of a lot of standard games, I think it's perfectly fine to do this. Steel balls have good matchups, generally speaking, in the early game, up to, say, round 3 or so, and especially into things like storms and arcs, I should be able to kind of get ahead early on and just build my board slowly, eventually probably selling out of the steel balls and just going for a board that you would be more inclined to see with the arc lights and the worms or something of the sort. Opponent here is a Typhoon spec, by the way. I am a training specialist, so I will be training my arc lights here. Arc light levels are great. I switched things up a bit in terms of positioning. You can see me putting the crawlers behind the steel balls on the inside instead of behind the towers. The reason for that is I wanted to pair them up in the early game to gain some tempo, kind of escort them in, make sure that they have some front line so that not all of them die, and then they can perhaps DPS and get in. Doesn't quite work out as I'd want, but you can see some crawlers are trickling in and at least they didn't die instantly. The steel balls, however, are doing a fantastic job locking onto those storm crawlers, killing the arc lights, and round 1 will be ours with a significant amount of units still alive, so not a bad amount of damage at all here, especially with my opponent already being below 4k, and we have a good slab of hit points, mind you, with 4,900 there. Round 2, we immediately get the free units. Phantom Rays, Tarantulas, Farseer, and Wasp show up. Immediate Farseer pickup from Laumam, which is, I think, the only reasonable pickup here. It counters both the Phantoms and the Wasps, and Tarantulas in standard here don't make too much sense to me. They don't like the long-range fights, and they certainly, well, are a bit unnecessary. They're a chaff clear unit, and both of us already have the arc lights, so Farseer it is. Now, Farseer into Steel Balls, level 1. I kind of wanted to get some chaff on the board, and I was thinking to myself, well, how useful are these steel balls really gonna be? They were useful, but if he picks up the Farseer, I think that these steel balls will immediately become useless on the specific side the Farseer will be on. So maybe I'd rather already sell out of them and get something different. Perhaps even another Farseer on the other side, and then still be able to buy something like a chaff unit, which is what I do. So I go for a more symmetrical setup here, make sure that the board is not unbalanced whatsoever, and I have good chances of winning both sides. And I happen to guess correctly here. I just randomly sell one of the steel balls, but happens to be the one that is in front, would have been in front of this Farseer. And so we're slowly setting up the board. Another crawler pack finds its way there in the back right corner. And my opponent goes for a bit more chaff as well. Picking up another Fang and another crawler there as well. Arclight in the middle is still doing a good job clearing the Fangs. And also getting rid of the Arclight as it has that level advantage. That's the lovely thing about the training spec. Left side though losing. That Farseer doing an amazing job. And I think Stormcaller's also really helping out. We do get the debuff forced, but this Farseer is locked onto our tower, and I don't know how good this debuff will be. It doesn't look to be that great. Farseer will engage our Farseer, and because it's shooting first, that should be a round win for my opponent, sadly. So he strikes back immediately, and that's how we enter round number 3. Let's have a look at the cards. Extended range Arclight shows up. Now, this is a card that I'm a little bit torn about. My opponent does pick it up instantly. The problem this card has is if your opponent picks the first tower defense enhancement, your arc lights won't be able to one-shot crawlers at equal level. This holds true even if you match the defense enhancement with the attack enhancement. You'll actually be able to see here, if I click on this arc light, it has 277 attack and the crawlers have 277 hit points. So it's perfectly able to deal with them without enhancements, but because you get more HP bonus from this first upgrade than you do the attack, 15% versus 12, that sends this over the edge, and so you need double the amount of shots to kill the crawlers. That can be a bit awkward, but as I was into training spec and my opponent didn't have too many crawlers just yet, I thought, you know, let's go for it. My opponent goes for it as well, though. And let's see how this works out. We get the immediate range as well, obviously. So we've got really long range arc lights. 153 there with the 20 bonus range. And here I was thinking, well, how useful are the steel balls really going to be? You can already see that they didn't do that much last round compared to the first round. Only 4,500. So I decide to sell them, and instead I get both of the upgrades here. And that is going to be really useful because, as I told you, the defense enhancement will stop these arcs from one-shotting the crawlers, and you'll be able to see that. I don't have too many crawler packs, but you can see that they cannot one-shot these crawler packs. It's basically as if they were level 2. And so that's kind of the downside to these extended range arc lights. But for now, it's not too much of a problem for me, as I seem to have the better chaff against this type of a mirror. Left side, though, still having a tough time. We did manage to kill the Farseer, which is a good thing. And now it's just going to be the arc lights versus the remaining Stormcrawlers. A couple crawlers on the tower, however. And that arc light will go down, but if we hover over the arc lights, at least one of them gets a level, and that's going to be what I'm looking for. Making sure that I get my own arc lights over that threshold of being same level as my opponent's crawlers. And so round 4. Look at the cards. There's Orbital Bombardment there. Shield Airdrop, not too bad either. Could have picked either. I quite like the Orbital this early, though. There's a high chance that in this type of long-range game, it will come back off cooldown, and it can get a lot of value for its cost. Opponent does the other option, decides to shield and get the Shield Airdrop, and so I shouldn't be able to get too much value. I was trying to be a bit greedy, hopefully hit the Stormcrawlers, as they are doing almost the most damage, but yeah, Arc Worm is quite prevalent, and so round 4 here, kind of ahead of the curve, my opponent immediately grabs a Sandworm by selling, the Typhoon, I guess, was sold last turn, but yeah, immediately going for the worm there. And I instead get all the levels on the arcs, use my intensive training, and get Elite Marksman to try and get ahead, but I was not expecting the worm to show up this early on, and so yeah, now I'm in a bit of a tricky situation. Mind you, I sold one of the Farseers, I believe, to be able to afford this, because Elite plus these levels on round 4 is quite early. You'll also notice that I don't have the best anti-air, but I had a Farseer, so it would have been a bit weird if my opponent did go for some air out of nowhere. Crawlers do get to the tower, getting the level up there, crucial, and we do manage to take out at least the 2 shields, which means that we should be ahead at least. It's only a 50 resource difference, but 2 shields are more expensive than that orbital. Arclight here, working away, but yeah, the Sandworm is still at full health. And will it level? I really hope it doesn't. Level 1 Arclight, not too much experience. Oh no, okay, we managed to weather the storm there. That would have been a disaster if it instantly leveled up. But now it's round 5. And we can see what we want to do. Rhino Assault available, but I don't think I'll be able to manage too much with that. Kind of hard to get in and get a debuff. Laser Sight, I'm not too sure about either. My opponent does decide to go for the Rhino, though. And I decide to go for a Mirror at this stage of the game, because I thought, well, I've got the advantage here of the intensive training. And so hopefully the level advantage will make it so that I can win this side anyway. I decide to go for armor first. My opponent, though, does not back down and commits to 2 more worms with the replicate tech on top of things. So we'll have to see how this works out. My hope would be that this would simply be too big for his worms to kill. You can see that it has more than triple the amount of, well, no, a little bit less than that, but almost triple the amount of hit points of those level 1 worms. And so I was really hoping that I'd be able to engage them and just kill all of them, denying them the experience. We'll have to see how this goes. More crawlers been added, of course, and we take the levels on the arc lights wherever we can. But This worm here gets stuck on some crawlers. The one pack that my Arclights were supposed to kill, sadly, end up having to get killed by this worm, and so it loses more than half of its hit points. I was really hoping it would attack these worms instantly, but it doesn't. And so because of that, if we now hover over the Sandworms, one of them leveled. It didn't need that much after last round, and the other is pretty close as well. And I think looking at these Arclights, it might even be able to level again. And so that would mean 2 level 2 worms from my opponent, and with the amount of deployments he's ahead of me, that does not bode very well for me. Very tricky spot to be in, and yeah, the debuff there, awful timing, and you can see the worm glowing with gold. 2 level 2 worms incoming, and I go down to nearly 3k hit points. Round 6, we get 3 unit reinforcements, and here comes one of the first pseudo counters to this worm arc comp, and it's going to be Phantoms. This has been quite a interesting development. It's also been made possible because of some additions and changes to the free unit drops, and so now you get a bit more of these high deployment Phantom drops, and they're really good. They're actually surprisingly good in standard. They're hard to deal with, specifically because of the stealth cloak, which I instantly pick up, and I decide to pick up more of them because my opponent is not really able to easily deal with air units. He only has a couple Fangs, and so hopefully I can just stall the fight for long enough to where the Phantoms are still alive and can finish off the worms. This is something that I would recommend that you take. Even sometimes against marksmen, this can be really annoying because they will stealth and then re-stealth and waste some shots, waste some time. My opponent goes for the Wraith, tries to cheese the tower, but that won't happen as we added 2 more level 2 Phantoms. And so this looks like it could be a good turn. Of course, the worm there is still in a bit of a bad spot. It does lock on to the right target this time. If only it could have done that last round. It should at least kill 1 level 1 worm, but yeah, that's looking like a very painful situation for me on the right side. We do manage to kill the Arc. The Phantoms there doing their best. Hopefully we can get a debuff, but sadly the worm goes underground, and so worm underground means that it cannot be targeted, and so it will kind of shake off most of the debuff and then get the debuff itself and work towards our Arclights. We will be able to get the other debuff with a slightly better timing. But yeah, this level 2 worm is hard to kill still, even for the level 2 Phantoms. But as they work together, we do manage to get a good round in, and that's a sizable amount of damage, sending my opponent down to 2.3k. Round number 7 here, we get the Amp Cores instant pickups, great items for the Giants, but I decide to throw it onto a Phantom because at this point, I'm not too confident about the worms anymore. I wasn't last round when I saw how it ended up, and I don't think I can easily match my opponent, so I'm kind of trying to send it towards a different direction. I do keep the Sandworm. I use the Intensive to level it. It's a good frontline unit, and any damage it can deal is a bonus, but I'm trying to pivot away from the mirror matchup we had and try to find different solutions. Now I'm also buying more Fangs here because 1, they're good against the Arclights, but 2, Ignite is a really powerful tool to battle these worms. Second tech comes out from my opponent, Burrow Maintenance, which is not very common, but can be a really strong tech, as you will see. And I decide to take the second tech on my Phantom Rays with the Burst mode, hoping that that will give them enough damage to kind of burst down some of these worms as they are above ground. Opponent, speaking of burst, goes for Phoenixes with a Charge Shot upgrade to try and kill these Phantoms, and they have enough damage at level 1, 8.5k, to one-shot my level 2 Phantoms at the very least. We'll have to see how that plays out. And so yeah, you can see I'm starting to set up some late Fangs here as my kind of backup solution in case the Phantoms here seem to struggle, which they might. And then the Burrow Maintenance, by the way, increases Sandworms HP by 20%, for those of you that don't know. And it also means it will heal for 15% max HP per second when burrowing. Compare this to something like Nano Repair Kit or Field Maintenance, the tech, which is 4.5% a second. Of course, it only works when underground, but you will see these worms heal very fast. And yeah, they go underground here, and just look at that. It's almost back to full HP. A good burst, but sadly the Phoenixes are doing a fantastic job for my opponent. Nice pickup from them. We do manage to kill a worm, at least from the looks of it. But all of these worms are going to be back to full HP. We do get the tower, but it's a little bit too late, and there's nothing here to kill the phoenixes. That would at least allow me to win the round by default. And so yeah, now it's just a waiting game. How is this engagement going to play out? We do get the tower. Hopefully we can finish off some of these phoenixes. 1 down. 2 down. 3 down. But then we get distracted. The worms come out of the ground. And that is going to be the phoenix there clutching up the round. And with 2 worms left alive, that sends me down to 2.3k as well. A good equalizing move from my opponent. Enhancement module shows up. Opponent picks it up. And yeah, improvement here. I mean, enhancement is nice with the intensive, but I wasn't really sure what to use it on apart from the worm. And intensive wasn't available this turn. And I mean, what would I put it on? I'm not sure. So I'm actually going to decide to skip it here and go for the improved firepower control system instead. And what you'll see me do is kind of go back to the worms, I think, in this scenario, as I get the improved firepower control system. And the idea is to go for the strike, which should help me, maybe, just maybe, win this initial matchup, as we will get the power on that first strike whenever it emerges, giving the attack an increase of 30% for the first attack only, and additional splash range, hopefully hitting the larves and maybe even a couple worms at once. This does hit like a truck, 51k hit points, or 51k damage rather. Add to that also the strike bonus, and we've got a hard-hitting sandworm. We'll have to see how this plays out. Of course, elite recruited sandworms. And I decide to kind of sell out of my phantoms here and reposition that item because they were struggling last turn. I tried to make the burst work, but the phoenixes were causing too many problems and we were simply not able to get the damage down to kill these worms in time. So let's see how this plays out. Bit of a bad engagement there from the looks of it, but at least we managed to kill a level 1 sandworm. But one of my level 2s seems to already be down. That's the benefit of this charge shot. Energy shield also picked up as a remedy to potential fort AA from my opponent. I think that's a good move. Yeah, we managed to get the debuff. My opponent is leveling his towers here, by the way. So the debuff isn't as long as you might expect, maybe. And this was a slightly better round from the looks of it, but oh, the worm there, not quite dying, and it's already back to half HP. It burrows again, and now it's just going to be back to full HP. All that hard work put in by the worms and the arcs going to go to nothing, as the worms are going to be taking out my own tower. But this phantom pack is dealing quite nicely with these phoenixes. Will we be able to clear all of them is the question. Some of them get distracted, but one of them, eye on the prize, realizes the threat of this phoenix and does take it out. So at the very least here we've got a tie. Maybe we can even clear all these worms. Problem is they are still going after the arc lights, and after they're done with that, they're going to go for the tower. So I don't think we'll be able to do much of anything here, and we'll just have to trade some hit points at the end. And yeah, that is exactly what's going to happen there. Both of us going now sub 2k as we enter round number 9. Get a bunch of spells. Well, one with the smoke bomb. Advanced power system, not too useful here for me. I don't need the speed. It's not going to amount to anything. Advanced shield device though. Cheap card. And it does make those shields much more tanky, which can be really useful in the late game. I also get my orbital back off cooldown. Intensive training is available. So let's see what we decide to do in this case. The good thing is that my opponent didn't pick up the orbital before, and so I have the spell advantage on this turn. Deciding to use it on the left side, of course, hoping to hit some phoenixes. But they are quite tanky, keep in mind. The orbital there dealing 2.5k per hit, which means that the phoenixes can tank 4 shots, as they do have that shield available as well. And they go for a third tech on the phoenixes. EMP now clicked as well to try and disable the hit points on the sandworm from the armor, and perhaps also disable some of the techs here on the phantoms. Now I decide to double tech Fangs and go for triple Fang on the left side. I've had enough of these shenanigans. These worms are getting away with way too much. It's time to pull out the big guns, which ironically are coming from the smallest units. But Ignite is a very powerful tool against worms. It also is really good chaff eventually with something like Portable Shield against both the worms and the Arclights that you will often see. So a nice pairing. Maybe I didn't need the range here. I'm not entirely sure about that. Could also go for just Shield and Ignite as a cheaper option. And yeah, Missile there from my opponent does kill one of the packs. But we've got some late Fangs incoming. And I mean, the crazy thing about this is these are level 1 units taking on some of the tankiest of giants in the game. With levels, mind you. I mean, level 3 there on both of the Sandworms. But they will go down just as quickly, right? About 16 seconds at 6% HP per second with the Ignite ticks. And so if we can keep them in place for long enough, which right now seems to be a bit of a struggle. Sadly, the Sandworm burrows a bit too quickly. And oh my, that healing is absolutely ridiculous. It's back to full health already. All of our hard work down the drain again. And so we're struggling yet for one more round. This time there are more worms alive and they're still going to look to go for our tower on the left. Okay, we do manage to take out that big Sandworm. That's nice because it takes a lot of shots to take it down. We've got 25 seconds. We'll have to see how this goes. There's a bunch of larves that have been spawned by the replicate tech. So for now, we're not really shooting at the Sandworms too much. Maybe we can kill the level 1. We can. That's good. Saves me 350 hit points. And so yeah, we trade blows again. But that was definitely unfavorable for me as I'm now down to 1200 and it's getting precarious. Round 10, third round of free unit drops. And here, nothing really looks too good, but it's, you know, do I really want to sell these? Don't want to go Fire Badger. I don't really need to. My opponent doesn't have a lot of chaff, and my Arclights are doing a decent job. So Marksman seems like the best option. Might also help with the Phoenixes. The problem is, I probably need to take a lot of things here to make them useful, and it's only 2 deployments after all, versus, I don't know how many Phoenixes there are back there. Okay, 3 is still kind of fine, but, you know, it could be more. And yeah, so here's where I'm kind of thinking, do I want to just sell something across 2 turns, or am I really going to make use of the Marksman? And I end up deciding for the Marksman after all. After a bit of thinking. Opponent has the shield airdrop available again. This tower, by the way, level 4, so only provides 3 seconds of debuff when I do take it down. And my opponent here, realizing that the Fangs are a threat, goes for fire on his Stormcallers. Only has the 2 Storms though, and one of them is on the wrong side of the board, so I really wonder how much this is going to do. And picks up a Melter. I wonder what that is for. Not quite sure what that Melter was doing there. Maybe he was afraid of the really big Sandworm. And I decided to go for the 3rd tech with the Portable Shield, as I saw that my opponent really didn't have too many great answers on the board at the time to be able to deal with this. And this should delay the Sandworms even more, keeping them out of the ground, keep applying that Ignite, and hopefully they should fall. Big strike attack there before it gets EMP'd to bring this worm down to half HP, and now it's going to be all up to the Fangs. The worm's really not doing too much anymore with the EMP. And yeah, just outscaled from my opponent's mirror. But the Fangs are still doing a great job, and we're managing to take out quite a few of these. And they're still the backline Fangs as well. The Phoenixes, on top of things, are getting stuck on them. We do get that tower. And it's only one Stormcaller trying to hit a couple of Fangs, so it's really not doing too much. There's just one Sandworm remaining. Do we have what it takes? It does go underground. I did take aerial specialization, by the way, to hopefully get some locks onto these Phoenixes. And now we have the Phantom Rays from the right side coming in for the clutch. This Melter should go down relatively quickly to the burst. It will. And there's still a Fang pack left on the right as well. They are triple tech, remind you. They're small, but these are the scariest units on my board from my opponent at the moment. It's just going to be this level 3 Sandworm versus the world, and wow. The burst actually doing quite a lot of work there. It's just a larva alive, and we managed to finish it off. and more than equalize the score there as we enter round 11. So really long and back and forth game between the two of us. Acid Blast available here. Opponent decides to skip. I was thinking about it, and I do believe I end up picking it. It's a bit tricky, though, because obviously if I put it here, either my opponent could beacon the worms, or the acid might hurt me just as much as it hurts him. I'm also not really relying on big damage. I'm just relying on the ignite effect, and that does not benefit from the acid bonus. So I think I probably shouldn't have gone for this. Now, opponent goes for another melter there in the back. Not really sure what this is for. Maybe he got scared about the level 5 phantoms being too tanky or something. Goes for the EMP, trying to land some oil by the looks of it. It was unlocked. And this is where I make a read. I realize that the one way he can win this is by somehow lighting the board on fire and killing all of my fangs. And with how little hit points we have remaining in all of the giants, that would be game. So here, I will actually purchase 2 more shields and put them all the way in the front. And then on top of things, you will see me play around the potential for electromagnetic barrage and put something there on the flank with these fangs to make sure that this melter does not send its missiles forward, but rather to the side so that these shields can survive. And I think this is a crucial read in this game to make sure that we do not lose to that fire play. I think my opponent probably should have just bought more Stormcallers. Tower on the right side is level 5. I think this melter was supposed to just arrive kind of late, and while the phantoms are stuck on the tower, kill most of them. But yeah, left side here, look at this army of Fangs. DPSing down those Sandworms that were causing us so much trouble earlier. And at the same time, the Phoenixes are going down really fast as well. Melter doing a pretty decent job, I have to say. The Phantoms kind of getting stuck there. They will eventually find that tower, and with the burst, nearly gets one shot. Arclight's also helping out. Only one worm left alive on the left. And these marksmen putting in the work as well. Well, will this be enough is the question. We've still got the marksman left and a couple Fangs annoying the Arclight, annoying that melter, and with the double shot that we picked up on the marksman to try and break the shield and instantly kill those Phoenixes, we finally end this game and win it. Now, this might have looked maybe like a very close affair, and on the one hand, that's also a bit of a telltale sign of how strong Arcworm really is. It's a tough comp to beat, so the counter is never going to be as easy as just buy this and you're guaranteed to win. There's always back and forth. There's always other plays your opponents can make. I think that if you're playing Arcworm yourself and your opponent tries to go Ignite Fang, your best play is to buy more Stormcallers and try and get the fire, right? Get the range, get that incendiary bomb, and try and get spread that fire onto the board. You can also try and beacon the worms so that they arrive late and hopefully more Fangs will have died. I think all of those are valid options, but at least the Ignite Fang gives you some options to fight back against the worm. And different problems might arise, but at least you'll have solved one of them, which will often be the worm. I think the Sandworm has been a problem even at high MMR for a lot of players, so giving you a tool to combat that and maybe then come up with different ideas is, well, might help you in your games. Also, Phantoms, surprisingly good in Standard, I have to say. This unit didn't shine too much in the past season, even, whenever it got released. But it's starting to find its place now as a really annoying unit to deal with. If your opponent doesn't have things like double shot on the marksman, if they click stealth on the Phantoms, if they get levels, if they get energy shield even, these are hard to deal with. Very hard to deal with. So yeah, let me know what you think. If you've tried this out in your games, how did it play out? Do you like the Ignite Fang? Do you not? Do you have a better counter against worms? Let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please do consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, have a lovely rest of your day. Take care and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.